Coogs House, the Houston Cougars coming off an emotional win, one of the grittiest wins of the Kelvin Sampson era. But we're starting off Monday with bad news.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe, download that we latest on Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. Appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you found us on YouTube, welcome back. It is so good to see you again. Remember to hit subscribe. Download doing giveaway at this point. It's every 500 subscribers. We're up over 2,000 at about 2050. Hit subscribe. Help us get towards that 2,500 mark so we can give some more stuff away. Like and comment on the videos. Let us know you're in that contest. And if, after being the bearer of bad news this afternoon, whenever you listen to this, you just don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below if you've ever suffered a sports injury. And if so, what was it? All right, now today's episode is going to look at a couple of things. For one, we're going to talk about dealing with injuries because that's what's on the Houston Cougars plate presently. The second segment, I want to talk to some about a big man that could be getting big minutes in the very near future. And last but not least, I want to hypothesize a sharp turn for this Houston Cougar basketball program. But first, let's talk about those injuries because elated, excited, etc. We recorded a post-game show after the game live on Cougars After Dark on Saturday night. Game winner, late night. Yes, I had the baby monitor next to me while we did it, so I don't think there was too much crossover noise in that. Emotional night, though, to say the least, right, on Saturday night. Fun win in Norman. Crowd was bananas. Shed silenced them. There's a picture that got me a little emotional on Instagram that I tweeted out. Jamal Shed's Instagram where he's with Reggie Chaney's sister. And he's from Tulsa, right? That's not so horribly far away. They made the trip down. She's wearing his jersey, actually. Big night for the Houston Cougar basketball program. But before the game, it was made very clear because there were pictures everywhere of him and walking with it. Freshman center, big man, Jojo Tugler, was not going to be able to play in this game. He had a foot injury, was what it was called. And then, if you remember, during the week, we'd heard about him having an ankle-ish injury last week, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, apparently during our recording, like it was late at night on Saturday, in the post-game press conference, Kelvin Sampson didn't really comment on it. He said he didn't need to talk to the trainer about it, etc. But Chris Baldwin of Paper City Mag, and Chris is really good at this stuff, so I don't mean that disparagingly. I just want to cite my sources here. Chris Baldwin tweeted out late at night that Houston freshman power forward Jojo Tugler is expected to miss the rest of the season with a stress injury in his right foot. Paper City Mag has learned this includes the NCAA tournament, the biggest blow yet to number one Houston's rapidly depleting bench unit. So, for those of you doing the math at home, Houston lost Terrance Arceneaux to an Achilles in early December. They lost Ramon Walker to a meniscus, lateral meniscus tear in mid-February. We're going to asterisk on that for a second. And they lost now Jojo Tugler to a foot injury, a stress-related foot injury in early March. That's really bad. That's three guys with season-ending injuries, asterisks, that are all key parts of the rotation. The key and a big factor of this team in November and December was how deep it was. Go back and watch like Houston play Utah, Houston play Dayton, etc. The level of intensity and all the things they do, the speed which they play on offense, is all dictated by the fact that they had a true 10 guys that could play at any time for extended minutes. They could play Ramon. They could play Terrance, those guys at small ball fours or out of the 3 spot. They could play Tugler. They could play Francis. They could play J1 at any of the 4 or the 5 spots, all of them fairly interchangeably. They could play multiple guards and have big guards with Terrance and Ramon, or smaller guards like Ced and Cryer. They had all the different options at all the different times. And frankly, the only real problem became like, are we getting everyone appropriate minutes? Now it's like, can we give anyone a break? Admittedly, all three, Terrance, Ramon, and Jojo, were not starters, but they were all three vital to what Houston did and offered depth that was vital to what Houston did. And now they're out. Now, I don't want to act like a doctor here, but there has been this conversation about Ramon Walker and the knee, and I guess theoretically a Final Four run would be after the 5-week mark. A conservative estimate on how long a meniscus tear lasts is about 6 weeks. 6 to 8, I guess, is the conservative estimate on most things you'll see online and stuff like that. And so, if things were progressing fast, 5 weeks back by the Final Four, that's so far down the road and takes so many ifs, ands, and buts. That's why I put an asterisk on things. But I guess we shouldn't rule anything completely out, especially for a guy that would be, frankly, a great burst of energy in that situation. But what you're going to see with Houston now, and covering this up, is a lot of de facto going to 4-guard-ish lineups, because without Tugler, they only have 2 true forwards on the roster. Yes, Malik can play at some. Yes, Damian can play at some. And I think in a pinch, you could convince Emmanuel to do it. But truthfully, as far as their true 10-man rotation from the start of the season goes, they only have 2 guys in J1 Roberts, Javier Francis. And as you saw on Saturday, Francis can get into foul trouble if he's not careful. Still has all those long limbs, still a young basketball player, learning through those mistakes, obviously, right? And so what I think you're actually going to see is a lot of 4-guard offenses. And frankly, what I think will be interesting to see is starting to compare where the offense turns to last year's offense. Now, I don't think they'll play with the same pace of last year. The last year was still a slow team relative to the national norms. I do think what you'll see, though, is what Jarace Walker offered at the power forward spot last year was he could play on the perimeter on offense and down low on defense, right? Now, obviously, Malik and Damian give up a lot of the defensive size that Jarace had, right? But playing the 4 spot with J1 or JV down at the 5 spot, they can do a lot of the same offensive things: stretch the floor, shooting the ball, make good decisions passing the ball, hit the mid-range jumpers on catch and shoot, right? Run weaves and stuff like that along the perimeter. I bet what you see is kind of a reversion to some of that kind of stuff. And I like that a last year's stuff was when they went floppy set with 2 guards alternate side with 2 low posts. They would always, after the 2 guys clear in the floppy, pop Jarace up to the high, middle of the key kind of area, maybe above the nail, free throw line, just above that, and let him kind of not quite isolate, but go to work, right? I think that actually suits Damian Dunn's game pretty well. What I would be interested to see is with the plethora of guards, you just kind of go to hot hand at that spot, because that spot gets to kind of work, right? Do you pop LJ Cryer there to where now he can do more of his floater game, get into his mid-range, etc.? Do you do it with Emmanuel because he's doing so well at attacking the rim this season? I'm not sure what Kelvin's going to do. Kelvin and Kellen and Quantas and Hollis are much smarter about this kind of stuff than I am. But what I do think is going to be interesting as an observer of this is that I think that's the natural progression in this. And we know that a lot of the guys in the roster ran that offense last year, right? Even Malik, who was redshirted last year after the transfer, understands it from practicing with it and against it. Obviously, Ced ran some of it, Sharp ran some of it, J1 ran some of it, JV ran some of it. All these guys know their spots within that system. I could also see, honestly, them going the 1 post, playing more in the midline and just really spreading things out, utilizing the shooting they've got out there, and kind of letting J1 operate in the middle as a true passer. He's such a brilliant passer with the basketball. That's an offense that I haven't seen them do a whole lot of, and had he not been injured, they might have gotten to it in the second half because he had the hot hand in the first half against Oklahoma with Roberts, that is. I don't know which direction they go. I lean towards the one from a year ago with just a smaller guy in the Jarace Walker spot, but given the same kind of guard skills, just because guys have done it before. Now, I also get that every roster is a little bit different. You got LJ Cryer on this year's team, and how does that fit? And how is it not Marcus, right? And so different skill set than Marcus. Not to say that, I mean, different skill set for sure, right? And so how does that translate into things? I guess, again, that's why the staff is smarter than me. That's why they do things but they do. That's why they got some Hall of Famer type coaches on that staff. But whatever the case may be, Houston's going to look different. If you're trying to look different in your ride this year, you got to go check out the 2024, I can say that, I promise, lineup at nissanusa.com, because right now they have all kinds of things that can push things just a little bit further. Ever wonder what kind of an adventure could be with around the corner? Your friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs, the capabilities to take your adventure up to the next level. My favorite looking through this is the Nissan Rogue. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for both city drives and great escapes. Class executives Google built in is always updating your assistant for calls and things like that. All kinds of great technology there in the dash. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen system. The 2024 Rogue is a perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada to go find your next big adventure. NissanUSA.com. All right, one thing we did not talk so much about in that first segment, because he did not enter the year and really go through most of the year as a key rotational guy, is big Ced Lath. Now, Ced Lath is about to be, in this podcaster's opinion, an instrumental part of March Madness. As crazy as it is to think that Big Ced, who by his own admission was not playing basketball 4 or 5 years ago, right? Big 6'9", 6'10", 265, 260, 270, technically a redshirt freshman coming over from the Ivory Coast by way of San Diego. He came in last year, mid-year, as a, quote, redshirt, spent the second half of the year working on basketball development with Kellen and the bigs down low. He is, a project in terms of by the end of his career, he could be the kind of guy that with just size and athleticism and balance and touch, he has a real shot at playing at the next level, but he's going to take some time to develop to get there, right? I wonder if, that he's played 10 minutes against Oklahoma. I wonder if that's going to look like, small potatoes compared to what he plays against Central Florida and potentially also Kansas, and then in the Big 12 tournament, kind of getting him ready with as many game reps as you can before March. Now, Ced is a true center where like J1 can kind of go between the center and the power forward spots. That is not going to be, and frankly, Jojo could too. That is not Ced's game. Ced is a down low, big body guy. And his 10 minutes that he played very well against Oklahoma. Only missed 2 rotations that come to mind and really only got burned on one of them. He was guarding the Northwood guy when on the pick and pop as a 260-plus pound center that, again, has not been playing all that long. His initial reaction was after the pick to scramble to the rim. He was a 2-step slow to closing out on the guy shooting the 3. Oklahoma was hot at the time, and then went through. That's about the only, tangible mistake you can pull out of his 10 minutes on the floor. I'm sure there are missed rotations at a more minute level that they're tracking with their fine-tuned comb, because they're, in a coach's office in the film room, they're following what their system teaches guys. But to the naked eye, that's only real noticeable one. Offensively, he's not a guy that we're going to feed the ball to down low. Frankly, JVR's credit, he's turned into like J1 has been for a while now. But I do think he's the kind of guy that can get a putback and toss some bodies around. He can tip it out for dagger threes, etc. He can do all those kinds of things for the Houston Cougar basketball team as well on offense. And what I really liked in the 10 minutes he was on the floor is because he's so mobile and bouncy for a guy his size, he was getting out and setting pretty powerful screens on the perimeter. And he knows his job after that is just to dive or to go find another guy to screen. It's not like he's trying to call for the ball on anything after that. But he's such a wide body and such a big load that actually caused a lot of chaos for Oklahoma trying to get through guys and navigate those screens. I also, for what it's worth, think Central Florida and Kansas actually offer pretty good matchups for Ced. Now, I know you heard Kansas there. Work with me for a second. Let's start Central Florida first because first things are first. And if Houston wins against Central Florida on Wednesday, they have a share of the Big 12 title outright, a share guaranteed, right? In the January meeting between Central Florida and Houston won by 15. Ugly, low-scoring game, as Houston normally makes it, right? Kind of game where, frankly, it felt like they should have won by more like 25. They won by 15. Central Florida played 3 guys over 6'10" at one point at the same time, but they all played 15 to 20 minutes kind of in rotation, right? Now, I think Houston will play a lot of small ball and make them come out and cover Houston on the perimeter, try and dictate things that way. But we also saw Houston get out-rebounded horribly against Oklahoma, and frankly got out-rebounded against Baylor with Jojo playing just a couple minutes as well. And so I think what you're going to see is there will be moments where it's like, do we need to put another big body on the floor? JVR is gassed. Jay wants in foul trouble. Yet something will happen, right? And that's when Ced goes out there. I think in watching some of that game back to like kind of refresh my memory on Central Florida this Sunday, I do think that Ced is able to play athletically in this game. Their bigs will be more like around the rim kind of bigs. They'll always have somebody in the game, I should say. They'll be an around the rim kind of guy for him to go cover, as opposed to pick and pop threats and stuff like that. I just feel like from a size perspective and athleticism perspective, if you're going to pick a Big 12 opponent for Ced to get 15 minutes against, it might be Central Florida just based on size. I know other teams have worse win-loss records and things like that, but just from a personal matchup perspective, I actually think Central Florida is a good matchup for him. We'll break it down on Tuesday and Wednesday mornings, obviously, for you as well. But at my initial thinking is it's actually a good opportunity for him to get 15, 16 minutes to kind of spell JVR. And then you're obviously going to go small with J1 at the 5 and stuff like that too. I don't think he'll ever go a true 5-guard lineup. I guess you could if you wanted to see what it looked like. You got a little bit of a lead. Central Florida is a tough place to play on the road, so I don't know if you'll have that. The next game, Kansas at home Saturday. Kansas is a noticeably worse team on the road. They're 2-6 in conference play on the road. This does not look like the same kind of Kansas team. Some of those losses, admittedly, without McCullough at the point guard spot, he looks like he's back. So take that as you may. I say that to say that Kansas, I actually think, also could be a good matchup for a second game of 15 to 16 points for Big Ced. You play Central Florida. You got film from the 10 minutes to Oklahoma, the 15 or so against Central Florida, and you go into Kansas. And obviously, Kansas has Hunter Dickinson. And frankly, there was a stretch of the first matchup in the second half where Hunter Dickinson just didn't let Kansas lose the game. They didn't let the game get close. He had his 20 points, had his 4 assists. I was surprised. I thought he had more than that back when I remember going back and looked at the box score. He only finished with 4 assists. I felt like the other all came at once or a couple of shots missed they should have assists on or whatever, and 8 rebounds. Now, Hunter Dickinson is talented, and I'm not the podcast host going to disrespect him. I don't think anyone is. That'd be silly. I'm not going to downgrade his talent. But he's not like more athletic than Ced by any stretch. He's a big guy, 7'2", listed at 240, which is stretched over 7'2", right? That makes some sense. But he can shoot the 3. He can pick and pop. He's brilliant with passing the basketball, and he's crafty, creative. He's a good basketball player. I get that, right? But as far as like getting moved off his spot down low or keeping up with them as he dribbles along the perimeter, Ced would be fine. Ced's athletic enough to do all those things. He's got to be locked in, obviously. He has to know, like, I'm guarding the best basketball player on the floor. And, by some people's standards, the second or third best center in America, right? Everyone's got their guys, but that's what people are ranking him as, right? And I look at it, Ced, I also think would do well against Edey, would do well against Klingon from UConn, et cetera. But in this particular matchup, I think the deal Ced offers is he's going to get Dickinson out the perimeter, right? He's going to push Dickinson out that far away from the basket because Dickinson's tall, but he can't bang down low with Ced. And so it's going to kind of make him almost weirdly a guard as far as the offense goes, as far as where Houston's got to cover up as a team. Again, I don't think he's blowing by Ced by any athletic means. It's just, continue to teach Ced from film from the Oklahoma game or from the Central Florida game and build up to whatever it looks like against Kansas. I know I'm the optimist. I've always been the optimist. I'm always going to be the optimist. I like to look at things like how can Houston find ways to win and get better. I do think this is a chance for that for Ced. They get the Big 12 tournament, the matchups be the matchups, and let things determine how they go. We'll talk about the tournament when it gets here, and I don't mean to say that it's not important, but I think Ced's a good chance to have a good week here, and getting him ready before the Big 12 tournament and then kind of using that as a testing ground would be an interesting way to go. If I were a betting person, I would bet on Ced having a pretty good outing at Central Florida, and then we'll measure Kansas after that. That's if I were a betting person. But if you are a betting person, if you're a person who wants to get interested in betting people, go check out FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets by winning any $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. For the NBA, they got all kinds of quick bets, same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Right now, the odds are great. If you want to go check it out for Houston, make it to the Final Four in Phoenix and winning the whole thing. So go check out FanDuel.com/locked-on and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, so I mentioned this last time. I'm going to call him the Sharp turn because I want to play this out for you. Houston has had guards on guards on guards, whether it was Corey Davis, Kyler Edwards, Marcus just last year, Jamal Shed right now, Quentin years ago, Ladiki, Houston, Galen. Houston produces guards. Sampson's teams produces guards. I mean, two of them are on our coaching staff right now, Quanis and Hollis, right? I mean, that's just kind of the thing. And I weirdly think that in this series of injuries, it sucks. I don't mean to say it doesn't suck. You'll see, highlights of Jojo Tugler from a long career at Houston, hopefully many years from now. Highlights of Terrance Arceneaux from a long career at Houston many years from now. Hopefully both of you guys are in the NBA because of that, right? Hopefully this is just a temporary setback for those two individually. And Ramon, we want to see him bounce back after the tough year he had last year and then all this year. But in the present tense for this team, there's a real, sense of just got to move on. Just got to find someone to step up and fill the role. And I know it's interesting to look at this way, but work with me here. J1 Roberts is giving you all he can give you. Right? He's playing with one hand and getting 20 points on 12 shots, right? And no free throws, I might add. You've got Jamal Shed playing like a Player of the Year candidate and should win the award, in my opinion, right? LJ Cryer is leading you in points and, frankly, playing better defense than you might have. Than I would have anticipated getting him in the first year, right? I knew he was going to grow as a defender. I did not know he was going to be as good as he's gotten this year, and I think there's the ceiling on him is bumped a lot higher because of that, right? You got Javier Francis. He plays 20 minutes a game. He'll probably play a little bit more, but as a per minute basis, he's really giving you everything you could ask for. Damian comes in. He's still finding his way on offense, but the highs have been high, the lows have been low. Malik, as good the last 6 weeks as you could have ever thought you're going to get out of that. Right? I mean, he's improved dramatically, become a vital part of what we do. Emmanuel Sharp is the guy that takes the next step. And I think, in my opinion, the guy who can elevate this team to those national championship hopes, even with the injuries we've got. Now, work with me for a second. Emmanuel Sharp is 6'4" and listed at about 200 pounds. I say about because he's visibly a different athlete than he came in at, right? He came in, I guess at this point, it's been over 2 years ago, middle of his senior high school because he broke his leg in a bad injury. And he was like, instead of staying around and rehabbing in high school, he's going to graduate in December and show up in Houston and take a, quote, redshirt year to work with our training staff and our personal trainers and so on and get healthy. Then last season, he was visibly very talented, but still working his way back from that. I mean, you got to take so much time off. You got to get back in shape. All those, he was just getting back. And by the end of the year, he was so much better than he was at the start. I'd say in large part just because he'd been able to play basketball consecutively for several weeks and months, right? Now, this year, he comes in, and he is averaging a solid 12.7 points per game. He's one of the three-headed monster of guards for Houston that are all averaging double digits. J1's almost there, 9.9, almost there, right? But I think the thing that he offers that you've seen him develop this year is he's no longer just a catch and shoot threat. Yes, he does shoot the three ball at 36%, which is electric, okay? But he's done a great job this year. He's got those broad shoulders, got those long arms. He's become like an ultimate aggressor, like a dirty, not like a, oh no, he's dirty, could kick him off the, no, like a like grimy kind of way. He attacks the rim, dives from the floor for loose balls, etc., etc. I think the next evolution in this is he grows up with, he makes some of those Ramon Walker type of plays, right? He's the one, we've seen him here and there diving on the floor for this, diving on the floor for that. He's the one that throws his body through the air. He's the one that recklessly abandons his like all sense of health and just dives into the stands after a loose ball. He's the one doing those kinds of things as part of the culture. And what I think is interesting is that there's been those hints, but I think that with the interest we've got and the rotations you got to start coming up with, there's got to be a look at, can he, at 6'4", 200 pounds, be that small ball power forward like Ramon was, right? Terrance a little bit taller and longer, but same kind of thing, right? I'm putting Emmanuel Sharp on a lot of guys. Can he cover guys like 6'8", right? We're about to see with Furphy at Kansas on a Saturday, right? Because in the first matchup, for what it's worth, Furphy went off, but that was also in large part because Emmanuel Sharp was in foul trouble, right? And so does that turn around? What does it look like at home in the second matchup? I imagine his 27 minutes per game is going to go up to closer to 32. He's got the most rebounds per game of any of the guards on our team, save for Terrance. Terrance, although, is not healthy, right? And I think what you're going to see is the next step in growth for Emmanuel happen a little bit faster than it maybe needed to. And Houston needs it to. And I really think what you're going to see is more of a, Houston's going to slow the ball down on offense. They're going to run long, drawn-out offensive possessions to try and make sure that they can save their own legs for their defense because they've got less guys to use, right? But when it's time to go get a bucket, with all the focus that Cryer and Ced get, Sharp's about to go get his, right? Think about the way that Tremont in the Auburn game last year in the NCAA tournament lit it up, right? Because Ced was out, Sasser was out. What's going to come next? It was Tremont time. That's Emmanuel right now, right? It's, okay, all the defense is on Ced and Cryer. All the focus on Ced and Cryer. No one's come off the bench, much shorter bench anyway. I think it's really time for us to watch the next growth from Emmanuel. And I think here's the thing, being a coach's kid, a kid that grew up around pro ball in Israel and then his dad coached him in Florida, I got a weird feeling he sees it coming too. I really do. And I think the deal is like you've seen him kind of make the smaller steps before this stride throughout the year, like I said, and that's not for nothing. Right. I think he understands that that's the way he's going to impact winning for this team the most, is doing that defensive kind of Ramon Walker stuff that makes up for the size while also now being that force on offense. And I think the combination of those two is frankly what can make him a pro down the road. He probably needs more than just a month of tape showing in March. That's a future problem to deal with, I guess. But I feel like, we talked about Ced as a star. We talked about Cryer as a star. We talked about Roberts as a star. I think the next star turn is a Sharp turn. I think it's Emmanuel Sharp stepping up and taking over games. It could be as soon as UCF on Wednesday. It could be as late as Phoenix in early April. I just think it's coming. And I think, frankly, it's coming faster now than it was before because of how many more minutes he's about to get. And I cannot wait to see it. I love watching that. He plays basketball so passionately. As a guy that coaches high school basketball, it's the kind of kid you gotta have. And I can't wait to see it happen. I'm excited about it. Central Florida on Wednesday. We'll do some preview, work on a couple guests, see if we can get somebody to come talk to us about them as well and how the rest of their season's gone since we saw them last. Between now and Wednesday, so it's a couple preview episodes for that. Then obviously Kansas at home to wrap the regular season as well. All kinds of things to talk about in terms of basketball. And then obviously as football news pops up, we'll do more on that as well each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. Thank you so much for making Locked On Coogs your first listen today. Locked On Coogs is a proud of Locked On podcast. Remember that it's your team. Our Coogs are number one in America, even with all the injuries. Houston Cougars. Go Coogs.